So I got a request to go over this question from the SAT question bank, a command of evidence quantitative question, even though it's not particularly quantitative, it's still in that category, and a hard question of that type. Now I have gone over this one separately in the video I did on the Khan Academy's hard or advanced command of evidence quantitative questions, but this is just going to be another look at it again by request. And so I think what makes this one so challenging is, well, there are a couple of things. One of them is we just have a lot of words to keep track of in terms of different indigenous languages and their relationship to corn vocabulary. And then, as we'll see, the last sentence is kind of abrupt in that it doesn't give us the kind of transition word we might expect given the relationship that we're going to find here. So what do I mean? Well, let's just go ahead and read it and see what we can find. So it says, in Caddo, a language from what is now the U.S. Southeast, vocabulary pertaining to corn cultivation resembles equivalent vocabulary in this language family in Mexico. Okay, I'm just going to call it the T language family in Mexico. This resemblance is perhaps attributable to cultural contact. Such words could have entered Caddo through the intermediary of the neighboring but unrelated Chitimacha language. And so here I'm going to underline that, and we see that here, okay, and there. Concurrent with or along with the dissemination or spread of corn itself from Mexico into the Southeast after the year 700, that the vocabulary pertaining to domestic crops accompanies them as they diffuse into new regions. So we could say the fact that this vocabulary accompanies the crops or follows the crops, sort of spreads concurrently with the spread of the crops themselves as they diffuse or spread into new regions, is an established phenomenon globally. Crops may also be decoupled from vocabulary altogether. And that's what I mean when I say we don't really get the transition that we expect or we might expect here, because this is really a contrast. It says they may be decoupled from vocabulary altogether. Corn cultivation became ubiquitous. That's a good vocabulary word, ubiquitous or widespread among the Southeastern tribes, yet blank. Okay, so what's going on here? How do we know we're looking for a contrast, or how do we know that this signals a contrast? Well, in these sentences here, they're basically saying that the language or the words for corn spread along with corn itself. Okay, and so what we have in this sentence really connects to what we have in these two rows. Again, it would have been nice if they had said, however, here, but we sort of have to read between the lines. Crops may also be decoupled from vocabulary altogether. So decoupled from means not linked to. And so what that means is we are looking for something in one of these two rows, because if corn spread into the Southeast, but the word for corn does not have, an origin in this language family, that's what would signal, or that's what would reflect this decoupling. And so when we go to the answer choices, we'll go ahead and start with A. The origins of vocabulary pertaining to the crop vary across languages in the region, with the words for corn in Cherokee and the Muskogean languages showing no demonstrable relationship to this vocabulary. Okay, so Cherokee and Muskogean, so Cherokee, Muskogee, those are examples of, again, corn-related vocabulary that does not have an origin in this T language family. And so that would be an example of the vocabulary having been decoupled from the crop itself, or basically, the crop spread from Mexico to the Southeastern United States, or what became the Southeastern United States, but the word itself did not spread. Okay, so we have these words, this word, that word, and this other word. They don't have an origin in this language family. So A looks pretty good, but let's check out the others. So B, the region is linguistically diverse, being home not only to Chitimacha and Caddo, but also to the Muskogean language family and to one Iroquoian language. Well, that's not related. That's not related to the decoupling of corn-related vocabulary from corn itself. It just says that it's linguistically diverse, but that's not really the issue here. That's not really the issue. Again, we want something that reflects this decoupling that they speak of. C, corn-related vocabulary underwent changes when entering other unrelated languages, and that's a pretty good sign that that's not going to be the correct answer, because that's sort of taking us off topic, right? So, the divergence of the Caddo word from the Chitimacha word it originated in. Again, we don't really want to make a distinction between these two, because these are both examples of, situations in which the word is still coupled to the crop, the spread of the crop. Because, again, in these categories, the word is related to the word from the T language family. And then finally, D, words for corn in the languages in the Muskogean family evolved from a common root, with the Muskogee word having lost certain consonant sounds. And again, that's a separate issue. It's not really about losing consonant sounds or gaining consonant sounds. It is about that connection between, the word itself and then this language family. And so it turns out that A is indeed the correct answer here. But definitely a tough question, as they acknowledge. It's a hard question. Again, I think the hard part about it, in addition to the fact that we just have to keep track of all these different fairly unfamiliar words, they're unfamiliar especially for those of you who are, overseas, as opposed to living here in the United States, where you might have encountered. I would say that Cherokee and Muskogee and Iroquois are somewhat familiar, at least to me, and Choctaw, depending on what part of the country you live in here in the United States. But that is one issue, and then the other issue, again, is that they don't really clearly signal the contrast, by using a word like however or on the other hand. But that is, again, what we have here, and so our answer is A.